Now I'm joined by Alexei Murayev. He is an associate professor of national security and strategic studies at Curtin University. Very good to have you here on the program, sir. Give me your analysis. Trump says a peace deal could include some swapping of territories, but Zelenskyy says, no, we're not giving Russia any territory. Do you think there's a peace plan that's actually on the table that both sides could agree to, or is Trump just sort of playing along with what Russia wants?
Look, I think we need to divide this problem into, or compartmentalize the problem into two or maybe three aspects. First of all, I think there is some sort of a draft of a plan between Russia and the United States, and clearly the fact that Trump doesn't want to have Zelenskyy at the table, doesn't want to have the Europeans at the table, suggests that he is willing to negotiate this deal between the two major powers, and then inform other parties involved in the Russia-Ukraine war of its outcome, effectively, by that assuming a degree of responsibility for making the Ukrainians and the Europeans subscribe and submit to what Trump may negotiate with Putin, even though I know that consultations between Washington, Brussels, and Kyiv are taking place at the moment. So it's a bit of a bargaining on his part. Obviously, then there is a position of Zelenskyy, and he finds himself in an incredibly vulnerable position because by now everyone forget about this old established formula, no conversation about Ukraine without Ukraine. So he is kind of almost like on the receiving end. And the fact that Trump bluntly spelled out partially one of the aspects of the deal, meaning that Russia will probably keep whatever it has right now, perhaps grab a little bit more in exchange from retreating from certain regions of Ukraine that Russia doesn't accept to be its own, rather than describes it as part of its buffer zone. And obviously, for Zelenskyy to simply say "Hi, sir," would be a political suicide, because that means this is the end of his political career in Ukraine. This is the end for him as the president of Ukraine, because he continues to argue that Ukraine will not trade any of its territory. It wants to restore its territorial integrity to the borders of 1991, even though it's unrealistic. And for the Europeans to simply accept this, meaning that they would effectively accept that they're going to be defeated there by the Russians. So there is a lot of there is a lot at stake. I mean, I think Trump is trying to put on a brave, positive face, because I think we also need to understand that in the meeting with Putin, Ukraine will probably be one of the discussion points, not the sole discussion point. And I think he wants to preempt any roadblocks that he may be facing with Putin, with regards to talking to him and agreeing on some other strategic matters that obviously shape up U.S.-Russia strategic
Professor,
dialogue.
I have to ask you, I mean, is it right, though? I mean, you're talking about a deal between Russia and the U.S. and not even having Ukraine at the table. And as you mentioned, Zelenskyy says a decision without Ukraine will be a decision against peace. Is it right for there to be a deal sort of made between Russia and the U.S. and not involving Zelenskyy and the Ukrainian will?
No, it's not, because it kind of really creates risks of how this deal, if it will be reached, will then be implemented and will then be honored. Obviously, if the Ukrainians will not subscribe to it, who is going to make them comply with whatever Trump would agree to settle this conflict with Putin? How it's going to translate into Europe following U.S. strategic guidance? We may end up in a situation when Trump will say, well, this is what you only have to implement. I gave my word to Vladimir. The Ukrainians will say, hell no. The Europeans will say, well, we'll continue to support Ukraine, even though the United States may decide to cut off or minimize military supplies, or provide intelligence in terms of in the context of applying pressures on on the Ukrainians, and then Trump may simply say, "Okay, well, too bad. I tried, Vladimir. Sorry, cannot get through." So there are too many risk factors there. Obviously,
We're
the
going to have to
ideal
see, Professor,
situation
about
is
where
to
this whole thing
the
ends up
warfare
during this
their own
meeting next
and
Friday in
understood.
Alaska. Professor Murayev, thank you so much for your time here on TRT World.
Thank you.